The authorities are on high alert trying to prevent the spread of a disease that's forced the culling of more than 100 million pigs in China alone. President Moon Jae-in says cultural content will be one of Korea's next growth engines. He calls on creators to make the most of their imaginations and pledges support from the government. And data show that the elderly population of Seoul is big enough to classify the city as an aged society. Almost 1 in 7 people in the capital are over the age of 65. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on our afternoon broadcast. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea has confirmed its first case of African swine fever, the disease that's caused China over the past year to cull a third of its pigs. Authorities in Korea have already culled thousands of pigs just today, and they've ordered a temporary lockdown on pig farms to try to prevent the disease from spreading. Our Kim Jae-hee has the latest.
At around 6 p.m. Monday, 5 pigs were found dead at a farm in Paju, northwest of Seoul, near the inter-Korean border, from what was determined to be high fever. At about 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday, a detailed inspection by the Agriculture Ministry confirmed that African swine fever has caused the deaths. The ministry gave a press briefing at 9 a.m. to announce that a 48-hour lockdown has been imposed on all pig farms across the nation.
Immediately after the confirmation of African swine fever, the ministry upgraded the warning to the highest level of severity. As of 6:30 a.m. Tuesday, the ministry has placed a 48-hour lockdown on all pig farms in the entire country and blocked cars from entering the affected area.
The ministry said those already en route to other places must find a temporary place to stay throughout the duration of the lockdown period. While it is speculated that the disease spread from North Korea, authorities are currently working to discover the exact cause of the outbreak. At 1 p.m. Tuesday, almost 4,000 pigs, including around 2,500 pigs from the farm where the fever was detected, were culled to prevent the virus from spreading. President Moon Jae-in ordered the thorough management of the situation to prevent the spread of the disease, and Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun also held an emergency meeting at 11 a.m. on Tuesday with related ministers and gave specific countermeasures to related departments to tackle the issue. The case comes only 4 months after North Korea revealed its own outbreak of African swine fever in late May. African swine fever is a disease highly fatal to pigs, with a near 100% mortality rate. The incubation period in nature is 4 to 19 days, but symptoms generally appear within 7 days. It's highly contagious in pigs, and no vaccine currently exists, but it's important to stress that the disease is harmless to humans.
African swine fever is known to be harmless to all animals except for pigs and wild boars.
Experts say people can consume the infected meat without it causing any problems. Pork prices could rise, though, as China saw record-high pork prices after the disease wiped out a third of the country's pigs. Prices in China last month were almost 47% higher than they were in August 2018, when the first cases of African swine fever were detected in the country. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea is raising the pressure on Japan to not release radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. A senior South Korean official has warned that if Japan does decide to release the water, it would impact the world's entire marine environment. Lee Sung-jae reports.
Speaking at the IAEA General Assembly on Monday, South Korea's first Vice Minister of Science and Information and Communication Technology, Moon Mi-ok, slammed Japan over reports it was planning to release radioactive wastewater from Fukushima into the sea. The minister said that if the highly contaminated water is discharged, it would shift from a domestic Japanese problem to a global one.
High-level Japanese government officials recently started to state that marine discharges are inevitable as a way to deal with Fukushima contaminated water. In case when it is discharged into ocean, management of Fukushima contaminated water is no longer Japan's domestic problem, but a grave international issue that can affect the whole global marine environment.
She also urged the IAEA to work closely with Japan in dealing with the contaminated water, just as they have been in regards to the Fukushima accident. But the South Korean official said what's more important is Tokyo's role in taking responsibility for the water.
What we need the most is that Japan should take substantive and transparent measures and actions. This also be done for health, safety, and environment protection.
In response to South Korea's warnings, the Japanese ambassador to the IAEA insisted the decision to release the contaminated wastewater hasn't been reached yet.
The remarks made by a former member of cabinet were expressed as his personal opinion. In fact, the governmental subcommittee on handling Alps treated water has been examining the issue in a comprehensive manner, including countermeasures for the reputational damage. The committee has not reached any concrete conclusion.
Japan has been storing contaminated water from the 2011 Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster, but could run out of space by 2022. Concerns are rising that Tokyo could release the water into the Pacific, a move that could trigger an environmental disaster. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump had said recently that he would like to meet again with North Korea's Kim Jong-un at some point. Many hoped it would happen this year, but Trump said Monday that the conditions are not right yet for him to go to Pyongyang. The State Department did say, though, that the U.S. is ready for talks at the working level. Kim Yo-sun has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's not yet ready to visit North Korea to hold summit talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Speaking at the White House on Monday, Trump said it's not yet the right time to visit Pyongyang.
Probably not. I don't think it's ready. I don't think we're ready for that. I would do it sometime, at a later future. And depending on what happens, I'm sure he'll love coming to the United States also. But no, I don't think it's ready for that. I think we have a ways to go yet.
His remarks come as Kim reportedly invited Trump to visit Pyongyang in a letter sent in August. Citing an unidentified source, Reuters explained that in his letter, Kim spoke of his desire for a third summit while extending an invitation for Trump to visit North Korea. On a related note, the U.S. State Department said Monday that it's ready to resume denuclearization talks with Pyongyang. This was in response to a statement issued by North Korea's foreign ministry that called on Washington to remove all threats and hurdles to resuming working-level talks. The statement came after an offer by the North's first Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee to resume talks at the end of September. A State Department spokesperson told South Korea's Yonhap News Agency that Washington welcomes Pyongyang's commitment to resume talks, adding the U.S. is ready to sit down at a time and place to be agreed. During a phone call with Japan's new foreign minister on Monday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reiterated their shared goal of achieving North Korea's final and fully verified denuclearization. Pompeo also emphasized Washington's determination to cooperate with Tokyo on a wide range of regional and global issues. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in says the content industry will become one of South Korea's new growth engines. Attending an event at a global human resource development institute in Seoul, the president said his administration will work to help make the content industry fuller and more prosperous. He said the nation has transformed into a provider and an active exporter of cultural content, noting that South Korea's exports in that field in the past 5 years have grown over 16% per year, making Korea the world's #7 cultural content power. He also called on content creators to use their imaginations as much as they like, and his government will open the door to opportunity. Seoul has long been considered a mecca for young people, and it still is. But the latest numbers suggest that enough of the city's population is elderly to make the Korean capital officially an aged society. Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
The people of Seoul are getting older. The Seoul Metropolitan Government said Tuesday that the capital's overall population, including locals and foreigners, stood at 10.4 million last year. Among them, people over 65 years old amounted to around 1.4 million, or 14.4% of Seoul's population. This means Seoul has for the first time become an aged society according to standards set by the United Nations. According to the UN, if the proportion of senior citizens in an area exceeds 7%, it's an aging society.
More than 14% is an aged society, and over 20% is a super-aged society. Seoul was already an aging society in 2005, and the South Korean capital is expected to be classified as a super-aged society in 2026, based on current projections. However, this aging trend is not a problem exclusive to Seoul. Recent data released by Statistics Korea shows people over 65 make up about 15% of South Korea's total population this year. This means the whole country is an aged society and is projected to become super-aged in 2025. This is because people in South Korea are having fewer babies and are living longer. South Korea's fertility rate for the past 5 years was at 1.11, the lowest in the world. On top of that, people in South Korea are expected to live 10 years longer than the global average. Several other countries are experiencing similar trends. According to Japan's Kyodo News Agency, Japan has the highest proportion of senior citizens of any country in the world, with around a third of Japanese people aged over 65. Even the urban center of Japan, Tokyo became a super-aged society some 9 years ago, with around a fifth of the city's population made up of seniors according to Japan's national census. Countries like Italy, Portugal, Finland, and Greece, with around 22% of citizens aged over 65, are also already super-aged societies. New York City is also seeing a big shift. Today, nearly 1 in 6 New Yorkers is 65 or above. When it comes to the entire U.S. population, people over 65 made up 15% of the overall population in 2014, making the U.S. an aged society. It is expected to become super-aged by 2050, according to the World Population Review. As fewer people start families in certain parts of the world, urban centers once known to be cities of usefulness are turning grayer by the day. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The South Korean government says last weekend's attacks on Saudi Arabia's key oil production facilities will not have an immediate impact on oil imports here or on the local economy. In a meeting this morning with financial institutions, the first Vice Minister of Finance, Kim Yong-bum, said the government will take measures to stabilize oil prices by securing alternative sources and possibly releasing its strategic oil reserves if necessary. Oil prices have surged, but Korea's airlines will be reducing their fuel surcharges next month on international flights. According to industry sources, the fuel surcharge will go down to a maximum on a one-way ticket of just over $29. Whether to impose a surcharge and how much is determined based on jet fuel prices from the month before, in this case through September 15th, before the Saudi attacks. The surcharge will also be reduced on domestic flights to about $3.70. It's time now for an in-depth look at the global markets this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me always.
Now, stocks on Wall Street closed a little lower to start the week because of worries about a spike in oil prices. Korean stocks today closing just about flat. What's happening there?
Sure. If you look at a lot of the economic numbers coming out from the U.S., most of the numbers are quite positive. That the retail trades rising by 0.4% in August. That is expectation of 0.2% versus 0.4%. So that's why people are quite optimistic about the overall economic growth rates. And also the U.S. consumer sentiment coming out, and it is beating the forecast. And it came out at 92, which was much higher than expectation of 89.8. So all these positive news was affecting positively to the equity market, but nevertheless, the concerns about the rate cut might not happen has affected negatively into the equity market. Also, the news of the oil price jumping by more than 14%. Has affected negatively to the global equity market. Dow and NASDAQ generally were down anywhere between 0.2 to 0.5%. Also, the G2, the Chinese market, has fallen quite significantly by 1% plus, as they are a major importer of the oil as they're part of the energy. Other markets were generally flat to slightly declining due to the news of the oil price rise and also the concern that on Wednesday, the U.S. may not cut the interest rate due to the better than expected economic numbers.
Well, of course, we've seen oil prices spike by the most in a decade after the Saudi Arabia attacks. Is this price hike going to continue, or is it a blip that'll be resolved sooner rather than later?
I believe that it will be a blip, that the overall global supply of crude should stabilize in the future. The oil price spiked, as you said, by more than 14.7% yesterday. At the initial surge, it was as high as 18%, which is a very significant amount. That has been one of the biggest spikes that you've seen since the January of 2009. However, though, if you look at the overall production capacity of the U.S. through the shale gas production, is the number one globally, and they can continue to pump more oil if the need is necessary. And if you look at what Trump has said is that on Sunday they will use the strategic petroleum reserve, and also most of the other countries will be using that as well. And in terms of overall production capacity of Saudi Arabia, people were concerned that it might be cut by 50%, but I think that it should stabilize over the period of next several months. So I think that substitution can come in, and also the overall production by the global level should be fairly stable. So therefore, oil price, we think, though, it will be on a range trading rather than continue to go up in the future.
Got it. Well, the Korean government's taking this quite seriously, as are Korean businesses, since for oil we depend entirely on imports. What effect might this have on the economy, and what can we do about it?
Sure. If you think that the oil price is going to remain that above $60 and it continues to go up, and it continues to go up to $70, $80 that we've seen last several years, then that is negative news for the GDP growth rate. $60 per barrel could reduce the GDP by 0.2%. $70 per barrel could reduce by 0.6%, and $80 per barrel should reduce by 1 percentage point. So that's quite a significant amount. As you know, we do not produce any oils. We import everything. Now, that will have a negative impact on GNI as well as the consumption, and also impact on inflation should be very high. So, of course, if the oil price continues to go up, that is negative news for Korea in general. Now, how can you tackle that issue? That's very difficult. That's why Korea has been focusing on trying to do alternative energies, including solar energies, and so the energy production through the nuclear has been declining, so that's negative news. So all in all, we need to focus on alternative energies, but the level of the alternative energy generation is too small relative to other countries globally. So therefore, all impact, it's negative, and if it remains to continue to go up in terms of the price, then the impact should be more of a long term. But as I said, I don't think the oil price will continue to go up in the future.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on that figure. Mr. Yu, thank you for your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, the United States and China will hold trade talks in Washington on Thursday at the working level to pave the way for higher level talks in October. Reuters reports the U.S. Trade Representative's office did not offer any further details. In the high-level talks set for early next month, the U.S. delegation will be led by Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. The Chinese delegation will be led by Vice Premier Liu He. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson still trying to reach a long-shot deal on Brexit, even after rather unproductive talks with the EU's chief negotiator. At a lunch Monday in Luxembourg with EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, Johnson only reaffirmed that the UK will leave the EU on October 31st as scheduled, with or without a deal. The European Commission insists it's Britain's responsibility to come up with what it calls legally operational backstop solutions. But such proposals, it says, have not been made yet. Luxembourg, the host country for Monday's talks, described the situation as a nightmare. It's been about a year since South Korea adopted a new law limiting the work week to 52 hours, meaning only 12 hours of overtime a week. It affects the country's bigger companies for now. Our Choi Si-young looks at how things have changed under the new system.
The latest data released by South Korea's Labor Ministry shows that most workers in Seoul work fewer hours since the introduction of the new working hour law. From March to May this year, workers in the Gwanghwamun area of central Seoul work on average of 39 minutes less over the 12-week period than they did the previous year. During the same period, employees in the financial hub of Yeouido and just outside of Seoul in Pangyo, home to many high-tech companies, worked on average of 9 minutes less in total compared to the previous year. But workers in Kasan Digital Complex, where many smaller firms are based, actually work slightly longer hours than the previous year. The Labor Ministry says that's because the new law only applies to big firms that employ at least 300 employees, and firms in Kasan Digital Complex are mostly small and medium-sized enterprises. The Labor Ministry obtained the data by measuring mobile phone signals of commuters in certain locations at the 4 areas mentioned. The ministry also found that many businesses pushed back their opening hours and more workers left the workplace earlier than before. Workers in their 40s benefited most from the new law, working 15 minutes less, followed by those in 30s, 20s, and 50s. The report also found that workers spent more on fitness and leisure activities such as bowling, tennis, and swimming. Choi Seong, Arirang News.
Fewer hours on the main job, perhaps, but at the same time, many are looking for more work in things they find fulfilling. It's part of the so-called gig economy. Oh Soo-young takes a closer look.
32-year-old Moon is a sales employee by day. But from 6 p.m. onwards, he is a skateboarding instructor. Using an online platform to match teachers with students, Moon makes anywhere between 20 and 100% of his monthly wage from teaching skateboarding. And he also gets to share his passion with students from a wide range of ages and backgrounds.
Teaching others and sharing with them what I love gives me a real sense of accomplishment. And the fact that it's good exercise helps me feel refreshed, rather than wear me out after work. Doing my desk job and teaching skateboarding really gives me the best of both worlds.
Teaching how to skateboard is just one example of how Koreans in their 20s and 30s are increasingly taking on side jobs after work, not just for the extra paycheck, but also to pursue their passion and share their skills with others.
College instructor Kang Se-jin teaches leadership at a university in Incheon, but during his free time, he works as a professional translator. Given the long summer and winter holidays in the academic year, it's a way of stabilizing his income through meaningful tasks.
Being able to work on different kinds of projects, or being able to see different movies or dramas that I've translated on air, I find that very fulfilling.
Kang has been using an online platform where clients can send a request for professional services in diverse areas, from marketing and programming solutions to makeup and drawing classes.
9 out of 10 experts on our platform are working second jobs. In the past, people weren't so open about taking side jobs, but now, with online platforms such as ours, there is an active marketplace where you can easily find work that you can do.
South Korea's 52-hour workweek policy, which went into effect last year, has also increased the number of people seeking side jobs, according to Park. The trend is also seen as a part of the global shift towards the gig economy, as work conditions become more fluid and flexible in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Korean capital, Seoul, is looking to become a global city of music. The city plans to create 4 times the number of music institutes for the public by 2023 so that people can learn to play instruments and enjoy concerts closer to home. The city will also put on 6 global music festivals each year. Also, throughout the year, there'll be events such as the Seoul Drum Festival, the Indie Music Festival, and the Seoul Traditional Music Festival. The first of these will be the Seoul Music Festival, held in and around Gwanghwamun Plaza from September 28th through October 6th. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
What can this door be? An unexpected encounter turning into joyful communication. An unfamiliar smile turning into a warm welcome. We wait for the day we'll happily reconfirm our similarities. Knocking on the door of an era of peace and communication.